Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I'm finally going to be doing another Curious Adventure video. So, Curious Adventure, if you don't know, is a year-long nonfiction reading challenge that I have started. I did something similar last year, and this year I sort of tried to extend the invitation outwards to others who wanted to join. So it is in total 12 challenges that will hopefully make you branch out in terms of your nonfiction reading. Today I wanted to talk about the book that I read for the challenge of reading a nonfiction book published by a press or publisher that you haven't read from before or that you wanted to explore further. And so I decided to pick Once Upon a Time I Lived on Mars by Kate Greene, published by St. Martin's Press. I got a NetGalley of this book and have already written a full review of this one as well. I will link the written review below. So I wanted to talk about this one in video format because I had a lot of thoughts, and as I said, I did write a review, but there were a few things that I just felt like I couldn't get into in just in the writing. I wanted to talk more about it. So basically this book is a essay collection following or sort of taking the starting point with all of the essays in space exploration, and in particular the author's experience from a Mars experiment that she was part of in 2013. So the Mars experiment was basically meant to create a simulation of what it would have been like to be an astronaut on Mars. This experiment was called High Seas. It started in 2013, I think, for the first time, with Kate Greene being one of the members of the crew. A lot of the purpose of this experiment was to study the psychological and social challenges in a spaceship of this kind, and especially because a journey to Mars would take a really long time. A lot of the things that they are trying to sort of find data on is related to food fatigue, for example, which is basically that a lot of the astronauts end up eating less and less as time goes on in the spaceship, and that obviously means that they are losing weight and become unhealthy through the journey of being in space. Almost all essays start in some way talking about one topic related to space or related to her experiment, being part of this team and being in isolation in a simulation of Mars. There's a lot of things that felt just sort of really interesting to read about an experience of isolation at this point in time. Of course, we have the pandemic going on, and when she wrote this book, of course, that was not the case. And a lot of the questions as well that she sort of raises, and a lot of the challenges that she experiences as part of the experiment is something that I think is particularly relatable when you have lockdown in sort of fresh memory. So one of the things, for example, she talks about is communication with other people and interaction, and being, for example, in very close corners with other people, even if they are people that you like and respect, when it's sort of the only thing that is going on. Even minor irritants can become major conflicts and can sort of become blow-ups when you don't have the space to sort of walk away and take time to deal with your frustrations. And I think a lot of that is probably relatable even for people who have been in lockdown. The sense that everything becomes very small and simplified. And talking about boredom as part of the experiment, she says certain aspects of your environment, daily schedule, and conversations smooth over, lose their texture. And I think that is definitely how I sort of felt with these long months of sort of the days becoming one long day instead of individual days. A lot of the texture of life seems to be lost when every day is so similar. A lot of the things that would usually break the monotony don't exist. In the beginning of the book, she talks about the importance of food and cooking in relation to the purpose of the experiments, to find sort of resolutions to food fatigue. It got me thinking about the fact that I've seen so many people share during lockdown, especially share their cooking and in particular their baking. I feel like there's definitely going to be a few like staples of talking about the corona pandemic years from now, and one of the things is definitely going to be the bread baking. That feels like it's been a major ingredient in a lot of people's lives, and myself included. It was one of the earliest things that came up because bread was one of the first things that sold out everywhere. Something I really like in this book in general, when she talks about Mars exploration and space exploration, is how she marries that with talking about social issues or society at large on Earth. So one of the things she talks about is the purpose that we have for Mars exploration being in connection with wanting to colonize Mars. And she says that depending on sort of who is responsible for the colonization and who will actually be able to be part of that, there will sort of be, that will have an effect on the kind of colonization that would happen on Mars. And she sort of questions some of the people involved and what the consequences could be, and the potential for the colonization of Mars just kind of becoming another reflection of the current class structures that we have on Earth. So for example, she says, historically, much of Earth's exploration has been rooted in colonialism and subjugation. What kind of remnant legacies and unexamined assumptions thread through today's discussion of to colonize Mars? So something I really liked in this book in general was her not just talking about the experiment that she was part of and both the interesting parts of that and the challenges of her personal experience of that, and being isolated, being away from people she loves, those things, as well as the purpose of the experiment and how it connects to our interest in space. She also makes a lot of thoughtful discussion on how we think about exploration in a general sense, and especially the costs of it, because that is something I find I'm asking for a lot in reading natural history in recent months. Is I want the author to be aware of the negative sides of general exploration for science sake. The fact that it isn't a neutral field that has just been interested in information and fact. It has often been costful for groups of people, particular groups of people, but also that it's often had its negative impact in itself. Information can be used in different ways, and I think that is one of the things that also Kate Greene has awareness of, the fact that if we are able to journey to Mars, some people who want that to happen and to be part of that have probably fairly pure intentions, but that information could easily be used for other purposes. And when we are trying something like this, we have to consider the potential for other stories to unfold or other routes to be taken. Another thing that she talks about is who becomes an astronaut. So she and the other group and the other members of the Mars experiment group were not astronauts. I think one of them was or had been, but most of them had other reasons for being selected to become part of the experiment. But she, like probably some of the others in the group, had ambitions to become astronauts. But she talks about the selection of actually becoming an astronaut and the fact that isn't and has never really been a open field to become part of. So she says, in talking about this selectiveness, reading through their bios, what I read was ambition, and a lot of it. There are so many excellent people in this country living now and throughout history who have had their ambitions blunted before they could even get started. So she talks about the fact that the playing field isn't even. People of different races and ethnicities, people of different kind of bodies are already deselected from the potential of becoming an astronaut. Historically, NASA has selected traditionally normative bodies for space adventures, but in truth there is nothing normative about a human body in space. It is in some ways deviant to put such a delicate construction into such an extreme environment where a body doesn't normally occur and can't function without great help. She talks more about the body in space, like in a literal sense, but also the body as space, and being reminded constantly of your physical limitations, being reminded of all of the things necessary in your system that you are responsible for as a human body, the many things that is manufactured in a spaceship, because as she points out, humans in space is not normal. So everything that makes that possible is manufactured. So that is also one of the reasons that there's nothing normal about a particular kind of body in space. And the fact that we have chosen a particular kind of body is because we have chosen it. It is a active choice. As I said previously, with who becomes part of a journey to Mars or a colonization of Mars, and what a journey there would mean. She talks about also the financing and the funding of this kind of experiments and exploration, and I found that so important, and something that I think is so easily forgotten in the grand scheme of things. I think the idea of space exploration is so glorified and something so otherworldly in a lot of ways. Talking about who is paying for this to happen, and even talking about who can afford to pay for the money for this, because a lot of the funding that is coming from private actors, they have so much money that they can spend on something that isn't clear to be actually able to lead to something. The fact that they have the money to set aside for something like this, I think it raises important questions in terms of the injustices of the society and people being able to become this wealthy. So even though that isn't necessarily the central theme that she wants to raise, she does talk about where the money is coming from. When you think about space exploration, there's something sort of magical about it, the fact that it feels impossible, but it has proven to be possible over the years, and increasingly so. And I think a lot of the time when she talks about the Mars trips, she talks about this as becoming a thing in the next decade or so. We'll definitely see if that is the case. It might be worth noting, if you are interested in this book, that NASA is doing a launch to Mars on the last day of July, I want to say, the 30th maybe, or 31st, that they will have a live show on their website, I think. Because I've just read this book, it has made me really interested to see the live viewing of this particular moment in time. So that, I think, was all I wanted to say specifically in this video. If you've read this one, or if you are interested in reading this one, I would love to hear about it. As I said, I will link my written review that I've done for this book below. I hope you're doing well and that you're taking care of yourself, and I will talk to you soon.